Hello and welcome to another Java video tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to have a look at collections of data in Java. We've already seen how to use an array in Java, and we saw that an array allows us to store lists of data that have the same data type. So we could store an array of integers, and each integer in the array can be accessed or referenced by an index value into the array, and the array has a common name, a group name for all of the values that are stored in it. So we have an array name, and then we can access individual items in the array using an index. One of the drawbacks, of course, of using an array is that arrays in Java are of fixed size. In other words, we can't add any data to an array once we've declared it, or we can't really remove data from the array once it's declared. So it's a fixed size. That suits some problems, but a lot of other problems require kind of more dynamic abilities. So we may want to be able to add more data as when we get data, and we might want to be able to remove data as well. So we need something a little bit more dynamic, and that's where a collection of data comes in. And in Java, we have a very nice data structure built into Java called an array list that has these dynamic properties. We're able to add data to an array list when we want to, and we're able to remove data from the array list when we need to. So in this tutorial, we'll have a look at how to use an array list in a very simple way in order to replace our use of a normal array that contains data, but it's of a fixed size. Okay, so let's get started. All right, I'm going to create a program here, and I'm going to just call this, let's see, I'm going to call this class, and let's call it data collection. Okay, so class data collection, and of course I'm going to save this as data collection.java. Okay, so in this class, what we're going to do is I'll just create a public static void main and the usual stuff here. And inside in this main method, well, let's start off with an array. Okay, let's go through the process of creating an array. So let's say I wanted to create some data that represented a shopping list. Well, what kind of things do I have on the shopping list? Well, I have the names of items on the shopping list. Okay, so what I could do is I could have an array of strings. So I could have an array of strings. I'm going to call them items, and I'm going to use the square brackets to signify that I'm declaring an array. So I have string items equals, and I have a number of ways in which I can add data to my array. I could create the array and say equals new string, and I could say maybe have 5 items in the array. That's one way that I could create my array. Okay, and then I'd have to say something like items 0 equals well, there's 5 items, right? So item 0 I'll say is milk, and then I'd say items 1 is, let's say we might need some bread, and oh, I just got rid of my other items, so I didn't want to do that. Items 1 is bread. Okay, items 2, let's say, could be pasta, and we need 2 more items, so items 3 is equal to, let's say we might need some butter on our shopping list, and then we need 1 more item. Items 4 will be equal to milk, bread, pasta, butter, and of course we're programmers, so we might need some coffee. Okay, right, so I can create an array like that. I can give the array a fixed size. Well, I have to give the array a fixed size, and I tell Java, well, what is the array going to contain? It's going to contain a string or strings. How many is it going to contain? It's going to contain 5 of them. Okay, 5 strings. Here is where I am populating each array item with a value, or giving each array item a value. So item 0 equals milk, items 1 equals bread, and so on and so on. Okay, that's one way to do it. I could also use a kind of list version of giving the data to the array, of course. So just to refresh our memory, I could say items, string items, and I could give equals and give a list like this. So I could say bread. Oh, I started off with milk. Let's keep the order the same. Milk, bread. What was the next one? Pasta. And then I had butter, and then I had coffee. Okay, so I could do it like this, okay, in one line. All right, so that one line of code is equivalent to this. Okay, it's just that I am creating the array or declaring the array and giving it some initial data at the same time. Okay, but both approaches are equivalent. They achieve exactly the same thing. This one specifies the size and creates the array first, and then we populate the array with some data. And this one, of course, does both of those jobs all in one line of code. Okay, so take your pick, whichever one you want to use. It's absolutely no problem. Each of those techniques achieve exactly the same result. I'm going to stick with the first way here for the moment. So I'm going to stick with this. So this is kind of like where we create some data, okay? And you know, how would we kind of verify that that data is in the array? How would we, you know, kind of make sure that our array was indeed populated with our shopping list? Well, we could write a loop to iterate over the array and print out the items. So let's do that. Let's write a loop, for a loop. So int I equal to, oh, I don't want to write it in the comments. I want to output the shopping list. So I'm going to write a loop. I'm going to say int for int I equal to 0, and this is the usual kind of loop that we would write to iterate over an array. So I'm going to say I less than items dot length, and then I plus plus. And inside my loop, I will just do a system.out.println, and I'm going to output, well, let's just output the items. Let's just output items I. Okay, so we're going to iterate over the indices that are that make up the array. So the array obviously goes from index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 5 items in the array, so the indices go from 0 to 4. So we're going to iterate over the array using our for loop here, and all I'm going to do is output each item in the array, and this is how I'm going to do it. It's going to be items I in there to output each item in the array. Okay, so let's save that, and I'm going to go to a terminal window here, and we will compile that and see what happens. So let's go to my terminal window here, and I will compile javac data collection.java. So our program compiles, which is good. Let's run the program now and see what happens. So we can see that we get our shopping list data which is stored in the array, output to the screen. Perfect. Okay, right. Now, the problem with this, of course, is that once we have declared this array for storing our shopping list items, how do we add something to the list? Okay, so I need to add another item to my list. But the array has a fixed size, so what I have to do is I have to change the size of the array here to maybe, you know, have 6 items in the array, and then I can go and then I can add another item to the array. Down here I might say item 5, and I could add in, say, chocolate, and then I can save that and I can recompile my program out here and run it again, and now I get the updated shopping list printed to the screen. So sometimes that's not a problem, that's okay. But what about if I didn't really know how many items I needed in my shopping list, and I wanted to just be able to add one, you know, whenever I needed to? So the array structure isn't really a very good approach for that, because I continuously have to kind of redeclare the array of a different size and then re-add all the items in. So it's not really that flexible for this type of problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we can replace this array with something a bit more flexible, which is an array list, okay, which is a collection. Okay, it's not a standard array, it's something that we would refer to as a collection, and allows us to add and delete or add and remove items from the collection whenever we want, okay, because we don't have to specify a size. It's a dynamic collection, a dynamic data structure. Okay, so how do we use this? Well, first of all, what we have to do is we have to import the array list from one of the Java packages. So we say import java dot, and the array list lives in the util library. So we'll say import java dot util array list. Okay, so this is what it's called. It's called an array list, and that's what we're going to use. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of my my standard array here, and we're going to use an array list. Okay, so how would we use an array list? Well, this is how we do it. So we can say array list, and what we do with the array list is capable of storing lots of different types of objects. Okay, so when we create an array list, we want to tell it what type of object it's going to store. Okay, and so this notation or this syntax that you're seeing, that you'll see now, might be something new to you, but it's nothing to be afraid of. It's just really telling the array list what kind of objects it's going to store. So we're going to say array list, and then we're going to use the angle brackets, and we're going to say string, because we want the array list to contain strings, okay, or shopping list items. And then I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it items again. And then I'm going to say it equals, items equals, new array list. And again, I have these angle brackets. Oh, not square brackets, angle brackets. And I say, okay, it's going to store a string. And that's how we are going to declare our array list object, our array list collection that's going to store our data for us. Okay, so that's it. That's it declared. And if I want to add items or add information or data to my array list, it's very easy, because all I have to do is say items dot add, and remember I'm adding strings, so I can just add in a string literal here, and I can say, what did we start off with? Milk, for example, and I can say items dot add, and I can say bread. Then I can add in something else. I can say items dot add, and I can add in butter, and then I can say items.add, and I can add in coffee, for example. Okay, so that's pretty easy, isn't it? Okay, we just declare the array list, and then we can add the items that we want. We can add the data that we want to our array list using this items.add. And that's going to add the data. Now notice that we haven't specified a size for the array list. We can just continuously add items to the array list, and it's dynamic. It will grow as and when we add items to the collection. So that's brilliant. We don't need a size, we don't need to specify a size, so we can just continue to add items to our array list whenever we want. Okay, what about outputting? What about accessing the data in the array list and outputting it? Well, it's actually very similar to the loop that we wrote to output the items in the array. I'm still going to use a loop. There are actually a couple of different ways we could do this, but I'm just going to keep it as similar to the array code as I possibly can, so that you have some familiarity with what's going on. So I'm going to use almost exactly the same loop, except that the guard on my loop, instead of saying items.length, what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace the .length part with .size, and the size is a method that the array list has. So the size method in the array list will return the current size of the array list, okay? Because remember, it's not fixed. So the items.size is always going to be the current size of the array list. In other words, the amount of items that are currently in the array list, right? So that's the only thing I need to change in my for loop. Now I do need to make a little change in my system.out, because this is not an array, so I don't use the square brackets and an index like I would with a standard array in Java. The way I'm going to do this is to print out the actual items in the array list. I'm going to say items dot, and there's a method called get, and the get method takes in an index, okay, like the way we used an index to refer to an item in an array, but we use the square brackets to do that. When we're using an array list, we have to use the get method to return that item at that particular index in the array list. So I'm going to say items.get, and the get method is going to take the index of the item that I want to retrieve from the array list. And that's it. I have replaced my array with an array list, which is a dynamic structure. I can add things to the array list, and I can I'm going to show you how you can remove items from the array list now in a minute. Well, let's just run this. Let's save it, and let's recompile. Let's recompile this data collection.java. Oh, we've got some errors. All right. Let's see. Oh yes, okay. When I declare my array list, I'm missing something here. So look, I have new array list string. Okay, that's all correct, but what I need is I need a set of brackets there at the end. I forgot my open and close bracket here at the end. So this is what this looks like. New array list. You have the angular brackets that specify the type of data that the array list is going to contain, and then these brackets are like the way we would create a new object, right? We always have those brackets there. So effectively that's like the constructor of the array list. Okay, so I just forgot those brackets there. That's not a problem. I'll just save that again, and let's try and recompile out here. So our program compiles. Okay, let's try and run it. Java data collection, and there we go. We get our items that we added to the array list printed out to the screen. Okay, so we get our items: milk, bread, butter, coffee. If we want to add a new item, well, it's just a matter of saying items.add, and we can add in a new item down here. Let's say chocolate. Okay, notice I didn't have to change the size or anything here because there is no size. The array list is dynamic, so I can just add a new item whenever I want. So I've added a new item there. Let's save that, and we can run the program again. Now here I'll recompile the program and run the program again, and now you can see we get a new item added to the list, which is of course the item chocolate. Okay, so it's dynamic. We can add items. We don't have to specify size. We can add items whenever we want. What about removing items? Well, let's test that out. So what I'm going to do is I'll have just before our output here, I will say let's see, I'll put a little system out here, and I'll say system.out print ln, and I'll say a little message, and I'll just put in before the remove. Okay, before the remove. All right, we're going to output that little message to the screen before the remove, and then we will have a loop and we will output the current contents of our array list. Now here, after the loop, I'm going to say remove an item from the array list. Okay, so how do we do that? How do we remove an item from the array list? Well, this is the way we do it. We say items dot remove, and I give the index of the item that I want to remove. So let's say, for example, that I wanted to remove the first item. So the first item would be index 0. Okay, so remove the item at index 0. And what's the item at index 0? Well, it's milk. Okay, let's do another remove. Let's do items dot. Now let's say I wanted to remove the last item in my list. Okay, let's say I wanted to remove the last item. Well, what is the last item? The last item is chocolate, so that's the one that we want to remove. Okay, so how would I do that? Well, I could give the index. Yeah, I could give the index. So okay, milk is index 0, bread is index 1, butter would be index 2, chocolate would be index 3, or coffee would be index 3, and chocolate would be index 4. Okay, so I could say items.remove, and I could give the index 4. Okay, that's a possibility, could do that, but there's a nicer way to do that, because I'm able to get the size of the array list. Okay, so if I know the size of the array list, then what I can do is I can say the size of the array list minus 1, and that's always going to give me the index of the last item in the array list. So let's do that instead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say items.remove, and then I'm going to say items.size. That gives me the current size of the array list, the amount of items in the array list, and the last index in that list is always going to be size minus 1. So if I use size minus 1 there, that's going to remove the last item in the array list. Okay, so I've removed 2 items. What are we expecting to be removed? We're expecting the milk to be removed, and we're expecting the items to be, or the item chocolate to be removed. And then what I can do is I can copy my output here down underneath where I've removed the items, and then I can put a little message in here saying after the remove. Okay, so I get an idea of what the list looked like before I removed the items and after I removed the items. Okay, so let's save that, and we'll go out to our terminal window again, and let's compile the program again, and let's run the program. And as you can see, we have the items outputted before the remove. So we have milk, bread, butter, coffee, and chocolate. And there we have them there. As you can see, they're the items that were added: milk, bread, butter, coffee, and chocolate. And then after the remove, so once we've removed the items, which items did we remove? Well, we removed the first item, So that was milk. So look, you can see milk has now gone because our first item is bread. And what other item did we remove? Well, we removed the last item, which was the chocolate, off the list. And you can see now that the last item on the list is coffee. So the first item and the last item have now disappeared from the list. And then we just now have 3 items on our list. Okay. So the other thing you can do, obviously, with the size is, you could, for example, print the size of the list. Okay. So what we could do is we could, print the size of the list very easily. So I could say system dot, I'll just say print size, and I could say system dot out dot println, and I could say list size equals, and then I can say items dot size. That's going to print the size of the list. So I could do that there. Oh, I didn't want to do that. I could print the size of the list there before I remove the items, and then I could print the list size down here when I'm finished removing the items. So let's see what that would do. So save that, and again, let's just clear our window here, and we'll compile the program again, and we will run the program. So you can see at the beginning the list size is 5. So there's 5 items in the list, and we can confirm that there by looking at the list and seeing that there are indeed 5 items. And then after we remove the items from the list, okay, we've got 3 items, and you can see we can confirm that there by saying, the list size is now 3. So you can see this is a very dynamic data structure. We can add information to it when we need to, and we can remove information from it when we need to. And the size of the array list will grow or shrink depending on what we need to do. So this can often be a very useful replacement for a normal standard array in Java, because standard arrays in Java are fixed size, and sometimes the problems that we try to deal with are not kind of fixed size data problems, and that's where we run into difficulties with arrays. So an array list, a collection of data, a dynamic collection of data, can be much more useful in those situations. Okay, so hope this video was useful. As always, subscribe to the channel. I'll be uploading more videos. Leave some comments down below. Hit the notification bell, so if you are subscribed, you'll get notifications on when I upload new videos. And as always, thanks for any feedback that you give me. It's very, very helpful. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned, and I'll talk to you later.